All right. All right, we're a little late. Let's give it a couple minutes for people to show up. One, two, three, four. And we don't have quorum yet. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to give it another couple of minutes for people to come in. I've been enjoying the fact that for the most part, Zoom has made us all really punctual, but that now seems to be slipping just a little bit. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Quorum 6, right? I'll be right back. Excellent. We now have quorum. Welcome, everybody. Oh, now we really have quorum. We got 7. We are good to go. Hello. Sorry, I'm just chewing on an almond. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for taking time out of your evening to come to the Community Board 12 Manhattan Parks and Cultural Affairs Committee. We have a pretty solid agenda, so I'd like to keep things moving and get to as much as we can as possible, as concisely as possible. And it is my goal to be done by 8:30 because I just think it's really hard to keep attention focused on a Zoom for more than a couple of hours. And I think at some point we hit diminishing returns. So with that in mind, sorry, my phone is making noise. Welcome. We've got on the Zoom this evening, we've got our Assistant Chair, Daryl Cochrane. We've got our members, Nobles Crawford, who is taking minutes this evening, Sally Fisher, Francisco Lopez, Danielle Jetu, and our public member, Alexis Marnell. I expect Naima Silver will be joining us later, and I suspect our other committee members, Etta Santiago and Barbara Fisher as well. I also welcome Tanya Bonner, not a member of the committee, but a member of the board and our second vice chair. Thank you so much for coming. And of course, we've got Jennifer Hoppe and the spectacular Paola Garcia, batting cleanup for Community Board 12. Thank you very much for making these possible and for always keeping things orderly on the Zoom. We've got a bunch of folks who have joined us in the public. I just want to let people know that when we get to the, chat is not enabled for this. We're still figuring out at the board level how to have both chat and Q&A. Some meetings have had it, some meetings don't. Even a year into this, we're still all kind of new at some of the fine points of this, so I apologize for that. Hopefully we'll have that enabled at our next meeting. And when we get to the programming updates, then I'll just encourage folks to raise their hands using the raise hand feature, and we can call on people to make their short presentations for a minute and a half or two. Aha, here's Tanya with her video on. Excellent. So Last month, we had 2 resolutions from this committee, which we presented to the full board. One, supporting Community Board 10's really outstanding work and commemorating the exonerated 5. And one, supporting the work of While We Are Still Here and their Harlem Heritage Markers project. I'm pleased to report that both of them passed unanimously, the former with 38 votes and one not voting due to conflict because one of our members works for the Parks Department, and the resolution related to the Parks Department, and the other unanimously with 39 votes. So I feel really good about that work, and I thank all of you for making that possible. I'd like to take a moment of silence to remember Jean Lee Poggi, who died on February 24th, and James Cataldi, otherwise known as Birdman, who died on February 26th. I suppose neither of these deaths was really unexpected. Jean Lee was quite elderly and in failing health, and James had some significant health issues, but it was still a shock and still really sad for those of you not familiar with their work. They were incredible environmental stewards. Jean Lee was the founder of the West 181st Street Beautification Project. She is the person who made the beautiful terraced landscaped gardens at the Step Street at 181st Street, going from Pinehurst, along Pinehurst Avenue to 181st Street. She's the person who gently dragged the Port Authority into creating the Dolphin Park in what was formerly a waste dump adjacent to the George Washington Bridge. She did incredible children's programming and community gardening for 30 years and was really a force. Jim Cataldi was a fixture in Inwood with his birds, was a wildlife rehabber, and, you know, practically single-handedly brought back a toxic waste dump near 207th Street and 10th Avenue to the beautiful North Cove. So Inwood and Washington Heights are better places for them having worked in them, and poorer for their loss. So I'd like to observe a moment of silence for them. I don't know what your view of the afterlife is, but I tickle myself thinking of the two of them chatting with each other about their respective best practices, because let's just say they had very, very different styles, but they were both equally effective. So many of you have, I wanted to give a brief update on the African American, Native American burial grounds and ceremonial pit. There's been a series of public conversations sponsored by BRC, the Bowery Residents Committee, with the support of the Manhattan Borough President's Office and also the Dyckman Farmhouse, which has been engaged in serious scholarship around issues of slavery in Inwood and slave holdings of the Dyckman family, and also the burial grounds on 10th Avenue between 212th and 213th Street. When BRC realized that the land that they were proposing to buy to turn into a shelter was the former site of these burial grounds, they stopped their plans and wanted to dig into really finding out more about the history of this area and what the community wanted to see done or not done with that land. It's not my intent to replicate that conversation here. I just want to report back to people to let you know that I was able to participate, and many of the people on the call this evening were able to participate in at least one of those sessions. These were serious conversations, well moderated. I learned a lot. I think we all learned a lot. And I really appreciate the incredible care with which that moderated conversation is happening. Included in that conversation are the woman who was instrumental in creating the African American burial grounds downtown as a national park. So, you know, this was a serious conversation, and it's timely in the context of the ongoing conversation that we have been having with regard to possible renaming of Bennett Park, possible renaming of other parks within the district or portions of parks within our district. And it's just, it's really of a piece of a much larger conversation, which we'll be having a little bit later in the agenda. I think that's it on that subject. If nobody else who was present for that conversation has anything to add there. Okay, and I also want to welcome Senator Robert Jackson. Thank you very much for coming. Let's see, additional updates. We had a really good public scoping meeting with Parks on the 24th about the Dykeman Rest. I think Jennifer will be reporting a little bit more on that in her report later in the agenda, but I do just want to let people know that the feedback deadline, Parks Department is taking feedback on that project, and the deadline is tomorrow. So yeah, tomorrow. So if people have additional comments on that, I welcome them to communicate that to the Parks Department, or to let me know, and we can communicate, Jennifer can communicate that to her colleagues in Capitol. Last month, there was a presentation from HPD and Cloth on the Eliza, which is the new affordable housing facility to be built on affordable housing building to be built on Broadway. Among the features of that development will include an arts, culture, and training center. We're going to be having a presentation on that at our next meeting, not the housing component, because that's not the purview of this committee, but an arts, culture, and training center certainly is. So I just want to bookmark that for people that will be talking about that in April. I wanted to give an update about the Washington Heights Corner project, which does a lot of work in our parks and has been struggling in the absence of a brick and mortar home since they lost their lease in August of 2019. I am beyond thrilled to report to those who are not already aware that they now have a new home on 180th Street. I think their address is 500 West 180th Street. It's a beautiful new space. It's huge, and they're doing programming, and it's just such an asset to the community. And yeah, I think that's going to be great, not only for folks in the using community, but it's going to have a tremendously positive impact on the 181st Street corridor and on the surrounding parks, because there's going to be somewhere for folks to go. I had on the agenda that there was interest in a holiday themed pop-up festivals in our parks, and I just want to check in with Francisco if the folks who wanted to talk to us about that, if they're here this evening, and if we're gonna, I want to try and make time for that under new business if they are. Francisco? Okay, I'm guessing he stepped away. So we may be hearing more about that later in the agenda. And last but not least, Washington Heights Inwood Task Force. Tanya Bonner has been doing incredible work, just incredible work in her capacity as a kick-ass activist. Can I say that on a Zoom?
Sorry, Liz, I'm here. I heard you. I couldn't find my app.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm going to put a pause on Tanya. Francisco, are your folks going to be here and able to give a little presentation under new business later in the meeting, or are we going to just, you want to tell us a little bit more about what they have in mind in terms of the pop-ups that you were talking to me about?
Oh yeah, I would prefer April, even May if possible. They're still getting their stuff together. I want to make sure they get a full presentation.
Got it. Okay.
But basically, it's a group of folks based out of Chicago. They want to come into New York City and do like kind of like bringing apple picking, pumpkin picking, and hay rides and that kind of stuff to our community.
Okay.
I think it'd be great as far as jobs and just for us to get something new and different, especially for the kids. That's all if we're all open at least 50% or whatever the new policy would be at the time. They do Halloween and they do Christmas activations.
Okay, so then if you can ask them to come in April, because we're starting to have a pretty full agenda for May.
Okay.
In May, we're going to be really focused on a lot of the enforcement issues. And that's actually a good segue into what Tanya's about to talk about, some of the noise issues. And we're going to do that in partnership with the Public Safety Committee, and we'll have representatives from both precincts, from PEP, from the FDNY, and hopefully from the Urban Park Rangers as well. So that's a little bit of a roadmap. Thank you very much, Francisco. And Tanya, you want to tell us?
Sorry, Liz.
Yes.
Before Tanya starts, there are two hands. I don't know if it's related to something that was said before.
I see that there are two hands, and I'd like to circle back to the hands after Tanya says her piece.
Got
Okay.
it.
Okay, Liz, thank you, first of all, so much. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, thank you so much for allowing me to come here today to just give an update on what we're doing as it relates to issues that, that your committee deals with. And so for people who might not be aware, the Inwood Task Force on Noise was formed after the community board's public hearing on noise that was held on August 4th, 2020. And it was a true community grassroots effort run and all developed on a community level. And so we have 21 members, and I thought I saw Martin Collins, but he's a member. I thought I saw him in the participants. So welcome. Hi, Marty. And we have been working really hard, learning about the issues, learning about how these things function, how the policies and procedures function in both the city and the state. And we have been starting to engage with stakeholders. We had a meeting with the city agencies that are tasked with enforcement of noise issues in the city. And it was a productive meeting in terms of getting everyone there and starting to open up that conversation. The focus was on solutions and what can be done, because we are swiftly approaching summer 2021, and we would like to have some solutions in place, plan in place prior to that. And which brings me to the parks. The parks. As people know, our parks are beautiful, probably some of the most beautiful in the city. And we saw the parks, some of the things happening in the parks in the summer that were, sort of, trashing the parks, large parties happening all hours of the day and night, things like that. And it took away from the ability of the community, in my opinion, to enjoy the parks, but it also contributed to a diminishing of quality of life in our community. Our parks were trashed, and this was at a time when we didn't really need, when we when there are budget cuts and there's less, people to help to clean and things like that. So last summer, last August, I did submit to the Parks Department a survey of feedback from the community in terms of the parks and what some of the problems were. And I think I might have even presented on this then. But what we want to do is, in advance of the summer, see what plan can be put in place. We do know that, there are certain limits in terms of what the Parks Department can do. And then there's a sort of like passing of the baton to the NYPD after a certain hour. There are limits in terms of the number of PEP officers and the hours that they can, of course, be in our parks because of budget constraints. But we want to see how all of these agencies can work together, how everyone can work together to make sure that we address it. As we saw from last summer, we had problems in mainly, I would say the most problematic was Inwood Hill Park. Had a lot of problems, but we also had people mention Fort Tryon, Fort Washington, uh, uh, McKenna Square, and Loftus Playground, many other places were mentioned. Most of the problems tend to be in the parks in the Inwood, 70% compared to like 30 in Washington Heights. But the problems were serious: loud music, loud parties, drinking, illegal drug use, large gatherings, fireworks, things like that were happening. We do know, and just so people are clear, this is a public health issue and it's a public safety issue. This is not, even though it's put into a category of quality of life, it sort of diminishes the severity and the importance of it, but really is public safety and public health issues. We saw our community had a large percentage of COVID cases, right? And continue to do so. And these large gatherings, of course, contributed to that. When you have these large gatherings and other illegal activity like drug use and alcohol use, that could lead to criminal activity and things like that, and putting other people in danger. So we want to make sure that there's a plan, and that's the goal of this task force as it relates to the parks, is to see what is the plan. And so we have been in contact with Jennifer Hoppe and others at the Parks Department to open up this dialogue again and say what plan can be put in place prior to summer 2021, where we can stave off some of these problems in the park so that they can again be places where people can enjoy, they can stay clean, they can stay safe for everyone, and they won't contribute to diminishing the quality of life in our community.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I look forward to you coming in May, and I really, really appreciate what you are doing with the task force. You are welcome to stay for the whole meeting. I don't know what else you have on your plate, so if you've got other things going on.
I will be logging off.
Okie dokie. Thanks. We've got.
Where's the love, Tanya? Where's the love?
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Jill. Hey, you know I love you. How you doing? Sally, everybody. Nice to see everybody.
I can't wait until we're able to meet in person and can, like, I don't know, hug each other. Is that ever going to be again?
I know.
So I've got a couple of hands up in the attendees and also on the panelists before I go to Barbara and then Danielle. I'm never clear on what it is that people who are attendees can see in the chat. So just in case you're not able to see the URL that Jennifer put up about anyone wanting to provide public input on the renovation of the Dyckman Rest, you can go to nycgovparks.org and you can find the capital planning tracker and you can click on that for the Dyckman Rest, and it's pretty menu driven, and then you can provide your input there. I'd read you off the URL, but it's pretty long. So
Liz, I can just log off now. There's no one has any questions. Okay,
good.
Great. All right, great.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
Bye-bye, everybody. Take care.
Barbara, you have a question?
Yes. I just wanted to briefly say in memory of James Cataldi, that March 24th at noon at Good Shepherd Church, there will be a memorial mass for him. So that's March 24th at noon at Good Shepherd Church. So I certainly hope the community comes together. His family is sponsoring that mass, and will be there. That's all.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Danielle.
I had a quick question about the Eliza project that you mentioned. I wasn't here for the last meeting, so just to clarify and make sure that I understood what you said, we're going to be having a presentation at the April meeting on that project?
Sort of. So the project is at its core a housing project, and we will not be having a presentation on that piece of it. But part of that development does include an arts, culture, and training center. So HPD and Cloth will be giving a presentation on that piece of it. There was a public meeting that gave a very extensive presentation, and it was pretty well attended. I was not able to attend, but many people did, and many community board members did, and many people from the community did. But one of the things that actually Sally suggested is that they come and give a more specific presentation on just that part of the Arts and Culture Center to the Parks and Cultural Affairs Committee. They agreed that that was a good idea, but one of the presenters was sick and unable to be here this month, so they're going to come next month.
And one more question. So is that going to be an opportunity for us to provide any input on the Arts and Culture Center, or is it sort of they're just giving us the presentation and that's it?
Well, it's going to be a discussion. So
Oh, okay.
they're going to tell us more about the project, and we will ask questions and presumably it seems unlikely to me that we won't have some comments on it. So yes, the point of that conversation is to have a conversation.
Great.
But
Thank
to be
you.
clear, just to be very clear, we will be discussing the Arts, Culture, and Training Center piece of it. We will not be talking about the housing piece of it because that is outside of the purview of this committee.
No, that totally makes sense. And I guess my thought was, I was going to save this till we have the presentation, but I guess I was just thinking that it was interesting that it's going to be just arts and culture and not necessarily a community center. Or I guess I wanted to further understand.
So I think that, it's hard for me to have a conversation on what it is, having not heard the presentation on what it is. So
Right.
let's hear their presentation on what it is. And once they've made that presentation, we can have a discussion. We can ask them questions. We can have a discussion about whether we like it, whether we don't like it, some of each. But with that, I respectfully request that you allow me to move the agenda.
Sure.
Thanks. Okay, so over to the attendees. We've got, I think that concludes welcome, opening remarks, etc. And I'd like to move to our programming updates, where everybody's going to get a minute and a half, except for one organization that is going to go at the end and is going to have 4 minutes. So people can just raise their hands in the chat. I saw Emma first, so I'm going to unmute you, and you are on.
Hi there, I'm hoping that my internet holds up, so please let me know if you could hear me okay. Hi everyone, my name's Emma Silikans. I work with Mighty Writers, which is an organization that's focused on literacy through all sorts of different means. We provide food workshops, meditation workshops, college readiness workshops in Philadelphia, New Jersey, and we've been providing them in Washington Heights as well since January. So we've come on board last year with developing into the New York area, and we basically our mission is to help kids to think and write clearly, and that can happen in a number of different ways. So the very first workshop that we've been hosting in Washington Heights has been a family cook night, and it's been focused largely on the Dominican community. So we've had, up to 11 families in some of our workshops. They happen every week. They are free on a Thursday night from 6 p.m. till 7 p.m. And at the moment, they are delivered via Zoom. And we're looking to develop out more programming as well in Washington Heights. We're working with CASW at the moment to develop a photography workshop, which should be available later on in the month. And that, of course, will be free as well. So I just wanted to introduce myself here. I've come to a meeting in the past, and I think what you guys do is absolutely incredible, but just wanted to say hi and let you know about some of our offerings. And I'll pop some details in the chat of how to register for the food night, which is currently running. And if anyone has any questions, I'll pop my email there, and please reach out, because we'd love to collaborate with other groups in the community as well.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
And Liz, you've been so valuable. Thank you so much for our conversations that we've had as well.
It's my pleasure. I love the work you're doing. I will try and pop on a food night. Cooking in a group on Zoom actually sounds like a blast.
It's been a lot of fun, and they're bilingual workshops, so they float in between Spanish and English depending on who comes each week and who speaks what language. So it's a lot of fun, and I think we're making some form of mashed plantains this week, which is a more I believe savory option. So if you want to come along, I can send you the recipe.
That sounds fantastic. I appreciate that. All right, next up we've got Deborah Barrett.
Yeah, I lost the video, but can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, good, great. I'm afraid that the young woman who spoke last and who I believe has just left may have had the answers. She said the next meeting that pertains to noise in the parks would not be held until May. Then I live on Amsterdam and between 189th and 190th. And I always call it the Highbridge Park. I think it is called the Highbridge Park.
It
but
is.
The noise has already started.
I see. I'm sorry to cut you off. This portion of the agenda is for people who are representing nonprofit organizations and giving brief programming updates. I value your input. I just want to ask for you to hold that until we get to Jennifer Hoppa's report, and then we can deal with it there, just so that we can stay on topic.
Okay, sure.
Super. Thanks so much.
Sure.
Next up, we've got Shiloh Holly.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Shiloh from Morris Jamel Mansion here. 3 brief programming updates. Our next virtual parlor chat, which is held on the 3rd Wednesday of each month at 7, is a virtual feminist walking tour through Harlem with Lee Hollinsby, who is a New York City tour guide. This weekend, we are having our Con Ed Family Day. We have grab and go activity kits for Women's History Month. The theme is What Mark Will You Make? That will be the pickup for the bags are Thursday and Friday, 11 to 4, followed by a virtual workshop on Saturday on Zoom. Lastly, our Veterans Voices pop-up exhibition will continue through April, and that is on view during the museum's hours. We're open to the public. The museum's open Fridays or Thursdays through Sundays. And then lastly, in the Q&A/chat, I'm going to put a survey that is sponsored by the American Alliance of Museums to better help us inform how we can serve our community in light of COVID and the various changes that have happened in 2020. So I'd be greatly appreciative if you could fill the survey out. And I believe that's it information about all of our events is at morrisjamel.org. Thank you.
Fantastic. And you came in at 1 minute and 29 seconds, which is impressive. Can you do me a favor and just shoot me a quick email? And this actually goes for everybody who's making a presentation of updates. If you can shoot a 2 or 3 sentence email, that makes my life and also Noble's life easier for the minutes, and it makes sure that we get all of your information correct.
Especially URLs and emails. if you say that you have them, please include
Yeah,
those.
because then we can just cut and paste them and drop
Exactly.
them into the minutes, and it becomes all nicely interactive.
Exactly.
Next up, we have Martin Collins.
Good evening, Liz, Nobles, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Martin Collins from the Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance. We invite you to join us for the 11th annual Women in the Heights at 7 p.m. on Thursday, March 18th. The exhibit opening online, curated by Andrea Arroyo. Our next installment of Sound Waves and Brain Waves will be at 7:30 p.m. Monday, March 22nd, with Grammy nominee Miguel Zenon and the Columbia University Zuckerman Institute. Info on those events are at nomanyc.org. That's NOMAANYC.org. The 19th annual Uptown Art Stroll poster contest deadline is March 30th. Grand prize winning artist gets $12.50, $500 second prize, third prize $250. Info and application at artstroll.com. And finally, the Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance new website will debut very soon, this month, as a matter of fact, and you can register your events at nomanyc.org. Thank you, everyone, and I'll put that in the chat.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I appreciate all the work that you do and that NOMA does. Next up, we have Rosa Yolanda Pineda from Conectémonos.
Hi, all. Can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, it's good to see you. I'm Rosa Yolanda Pineda from Conectémonos. We're looking to inspire intergenerational agents of change to bring a program to 3 sites. There are urban farm behind GW. We submitted the MOU to the Department of Education. We're waiting for that. So what's more relevant to this are the other 2 sites, which are the West 186th Street basketball court. I have emailed you and reached out to the parties that are dealing with these issues. We are looking to change the policy permit from sports to special events. This is an issue that I have brought to this committee before. At this point, we are looking to get your support and the support of the elected officials. And we're also going to start a petition. So I wanted to give you the heads up for the West 186th Street basketball court. At the Juan Bosch Plaza, last fall, we started a social inequality healing garden with It's My Park Day. We planted the bulbs and they will blossom very soon. What we would like to do there, so we're going to be meeting the fourth Thursday of every month from March to June, and we are working very closely with Renee. A new proposal that I would like to make to this committee is the formation of Friends of Highbridge.
Okay.
And that ends my presentation. I know that when I have written to you guys, you have mentioned that there are organizations that are working with the parks. I would like to be connected with them, and I would like to discuss with both Liz and Jennifer as to what is the best way to get this moving. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the best way to work with them is to just jump right in and work with them. I think Jennifer has the contact information probably at her fingertips in a way that I do not. Sorry to put you on the spot there, but I know it's the New York City Parks Foundation. who I think you're actually already working with. So yeah, Jennifer, you want to field that, please?
Sure. Rosa, I think I wrote to you about this. We're resurrecting the Highbridge Park Alliance, our operations meetings. We work with about 20 different partner groups across the 130 acres of Highbridge. So it's more of an alliance. And then that way all the groups are hearing about each group's individual efforts. They can identify synergies to collaborate. And it's more integrated approach in the overall park and its revitalization. Obviously, because of all the construction, you know, that's been put on hiatus, but that's something we're looking to resurrect, if not later this month, early next. We'd love for you to be a part of it, obviously.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So I see that Maggie has her hand up. Since I'm looking at the questions that Maggie has in the chat, I'm gonna call on you like with Deborah Barrett later in the agenda under Jennifer's report, since you're asking parks conditions specific questions. And I'm going to go to Alexander Campos from the Hispanic Society.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us again. I have a few things to announce. First of all, one of the things that we're very pleased of offering or doing is working with high school students at the Philip Randolph High School, which I know is not in this district, but it's right below. It's on 135th Street, but still part of our community for the Hispanic Society as we go, you know, to all of Upper Manhattan. And we're doing a project with Yale University, architecture graduate course. And the students are talking to graduate students about architecture and the needs of space and facilities in Uptown. So it's really a wonderful way to engage high school students in the concept of design and construction and just about places where we should be existing in. And how the museum as a gathering place fills that gap. Also doing a wonderful video tutorials. These are actually art making workshops that families can do together. We're doing one tomorrow on honor of Archer Huntington's birthday, who's the founder of the Society. He did a diorama when he was a kid about what he wanted the museum to look like. Mm-hmm. And so he also been fascinated with museums. So this diorama, this workshop, this video tutorial is going to be teaching kids how to make a diorama. And so it'll be fun to watch. And of course, I got Dobo about putting the links and I'll send that to Liz, all the stuff. And the other thing I want to mention very quickly is that we also started a Women in the Hispanic Society, which features short, like 30-minute discussions or presentations about various women at the Hispanic Society, from artists to employees, curators, and librarians. And the first one it's going to be every 8th of each month, the next rest of the year. So the first one was yesterday, and it featured Anna Hyatt Huntington, who is a famed sculptor, who is an already established artist before she married Archer Huntington. And of course, if you know the museum, you know the Alcid sculpture that sits in the museum's court or terrace. It's done by her. She also did the famous sculpture of Martí, the Cuban Cuban leader that's in Central Park. So she was well known and respected nationally and internationally. And so it's every 8th of the month. And the last thing I want to mention is that our concert series continues, and it's Apollo and Daphne. And the next one is on March 31st. It's a live YouTube event with guest artists Esteban La Rota, who is the Baroque guitarist, and Camila Zamora, who's a soprano.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And again, if you could shoot that all in an email so that we have it for the minutes, including, of course, the links. Next up, I see that Maggie actually has a question about the Ring, the Riverside Inwood Neighborhood Garden. So I'm gonna give you a minute and a half to update us on what's happening there.
Hello. So the Ring Garden is in its 37th year. And we normally hold a number of events. And you know, during all of last year, Parks was giving us different, ideas of what we could do in terms of opening and closing, and in terms of having groups there. And we haven't really gotten that kind of advice yet this year. And normally by now we're going to be planning Art in the Garden, which usually happens in June. We predated the art stroll by a couple of years, I think, 2001. And, you know, if we're going to have that this year, we need to be planning it now. So it's important to know the answer to that and other things. We normally have flea markets twice a year. And, you know, so we just need some advice about what to do.
Yeah, Jennifer, please.
So Maggie, I think the 50-person cap is still in place, so you can go ahead and do programs, you know, that can accommodate up to 50 people, as long as you have your safety plan. And then in terms of the governor's recent announcement about 200 people, the city and the Parks Department are still parsing out how that's going to be applied to our land, given our context and the size of crowds and the existing volume of use. So the special events, the Manhattan Special Events Office that administers the special event permits has just asked for patience because that was just made. And now the city is trying to parse through application ramifications for that. How do we maintain public safety still?
So when do you think we might know?
Well, it's not just the Parks Department, it's the Department of Health. And I think some flies in the ointment are the fact that there's growing concern about the variants. But do you ever have events in the garden that accommodate more than 50?
Well, the flea markets, which go around the garden altogether, you know, are certainly more than 50.
But never more than 50.
Yeah, but not typically 50, more than 50 at once.
Time.
Yeah, sometimes yes, because it's a big area. It's 3 linear blocks. I mean, it would be hard for us to keep count, you know, because of the layout.
Right. Well, obviously, this is a recent, a lot is still in flux. So once we get more clarification from Department of Health and everyone else, we'll be transmitting that to people who have applied for permits in the past.
So may I suggest that perhaps, Maggie, you go ahead and apply for all of these events, even with the 50-person cap, understanding that by the time you get closer to the event, there is a high degree of likelihood that the cap may change, either because the cap has changed generally or because the particulars of your setup lend itself to some kind of exception. I mean, I get that that's a little bit, it's always easier if there's a really clear, this is what it is. But it seems like maybe going forward with what you're able to do now in the hopes that what you want to do, you can get closer to the date is probably the way to go on this.
Yeah, submit for the dates you want so that there are no conflicts and somebody else, you know, has an event on the day you want it, for sure.
I'm not sure what that means, because in the past we pretty much held our art in the garden, whenever we wanted it. We have to now coordinate with other gardens or something?
No, I'm just saying for the flea market, since that's outside of the specific confines of the garden.
Right, that's true. And Green Thumb told us that because that event is outside of Parkland, you know, that we don't really need to apply for a permit for that.
You don't get a permit from DOT or a street activity permit?
I don't know.
Okay, so here's what I suggest you do. If what you do didn't require filing for a permit, then the point is moot. Go ahead and do what you're doing. And if what you're used to doing requires filing for a permit, go ahead and file for a permit on the dates that you would like to have those events. And with that, I would respectfully request that we move this conversation offline so that we can get into whatever the really particular details of exactly how to fill out what. I don't think we really need to do that here.
Okay.
Cool. Next up, we've got Sally Fisher reporting from Friends of Inwood Hill Park. And I do want to just give you a shout out with gratitude for your role in helping to coordinate that excellent recycling event with Parks Department and Lower East Side, whatever they're called. There were like many tons of e-waste collected. So thank you for that. What else you got for us, Sally?
Okay, sure. I don't have the tonnage, but I do know that over 350 families participated, which was probably twice the number of families that participated the last time we held it. So it was a huge event, and we thank everybody. If you would like to see e-waste events closer to where you live, the person who controls the financing of those is the council members. Reach out to your local council member and ask them to please support Lower East Side Ecology Center. Then we can have more e-waste events. But they're not for profit, so money doesn't grow on trees. It just grows in City Hall. We just have to capture our share. 2 events to put on your calendar. First, Earth Day comes up on April 22nd. We're looking to do our 5th, would have been our 6th if not for COVID. Earth Day celebration in Inwood Hill Park. That will be the weekend following Earth Day. So the 24th is a Saturday, probably something on Friday night, Saturday, and into Sunday. The second event to note is the 10th annual River Sweep, which is a cleanup of our waterfronts. We've been doing it for, this will be our 4th year at the Dykeman Pier, and we're also adding another site in northern Manhattan. So there will be details forthcoming on those, but save the date, which is May 1st, which is the weekend after our Earth Day celebration. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Next up, we've got Alexis. What's the name of the folks from Internal Creations?
He's here. The young man is Jazeel Montez.
Okay.
Yeah, Internal Creations.
Okay, you've got some very sketchy internet going on there. It sounds like you're talking to us through some molasses. So Jazeel Montez from Internal Creations, I'm going to give you 4 minutes so that you can tell us about your organization.
No worries.
Thank you very much. I'm here.
There.
Yes,
He's here.
I'm here.
Just a little louder.
Okie dokie. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okie dokie. Well, thank you so much. I do appreciate having the opportunity to speak on Internal Creations, what we are and what we have coming up. So good evening, everybody. My name is Hassel Montez, and I am the Executive Director of Internal Creations. Internal Creations is an arts nonprofit with a mission to develop leadership, self-sufficiency, and life skills through learning the classical guitar. I'm a Washington Heights born and raised young man myself, and this has been a passion of mine since the get-go because it's an instrument that saved my life. So I thought, why not bring it to Washington Heights and help the kids that we have here as well to learn the classical guitar because of its discipline and a popular instrument that can play many different styles of music and also relates to the Latin field, such as myself. So one of the things that I want to bring up is we finally have been able to start getting our programming up in Washington Heights running. And the first program that we have is the Mih Victory Program, which is run in the Mih Victory Clinic with Dr. Garcia on 180th Street and St. Nicholas Avenue. And there we are working with substance abuse and, substance abuse and alcohol abuse victims who go there for therapy with Dr. Garcia. So we're pretty much using the classical guitar now to aid their therapy and use it as a vehicle to pretty much redirect their their energy in a positive manner, in a productive manner, which has been bearing wonderful results on our end and has made us very happy and very it puts tears to my eyes. Let's just put it that way. And so because of the fact that it's in a clinic, one of the things that we have just gotten funding for with not just the Councilman Idanis Rodriguez, but with the LMCC grants and some others coming in, we are actually expanding the programming for the community at large for our kids and also adults at Holy Rood Church. We just had a meeting with Father Barrios to see how we can start implementing this, and I'm be sending a proposal of how we're using the space. And he is very interested in pursuing that and making that become a reality very, very soon. So definitely something to keep updated on, and something that could be happening by either May and or the following academic year. So one final thing that we are running this week is our March 13th, which is this Saturday. We have a performer from Russia. His name is Grisha Goryachev, and he's a flamenco guitarist. If you have never seen or heard of him, he is beyond this world. His fingers move faster than lightning strikes. So I recommend you RSVP. It's a free virtual event that we're hosting with our partners from Austin, Texas, Austin Classical Guitar. And I encourage everybody to come and have a glass of wine. Maybe it might be a cold night that night, and sit by the fire if we have a fake fireplace, and enjoy some nice flamenco guitar. So in a nutshell, we just love the community. We love our youth. We love our people, and guitar is a way to unify and a way to get discipline instilled in us, and also a way to just speak a language no matter what language we speak. And so that is Internal Creations. We're here and we're musically creating each other. Thank you.
That sounds fantastic. Do you have a website, Facebook, Insta?
Absolutely. We have all of those, and you can find it all at the website, internalcreations.org. And you can RSVP for the event on Saturday there, but I'll also be sending the email out to you and Nobles as well.
Thank you. I do want to let you know that she came to a meeting a couple of months ago. Sorry, a woman named Julia Attaway. She's the executive director of the Cabrini Shrine. And they have weekly sort of prayerful meditation. It's not a religious program. It's just local musicians providing 1 hour of music in a very COVID safe space for people to come and just unplug and listen to some music. So it sounds like, I don't have her contact information handy, but if you go to the Cabrini Shrine, if you Google Cabrini Shrine, it's up on Fort Washington Avenue and 190th Street.
Beautiful.
You can get their phone number, call her. Her name is Julia Attaway. She's always looking for local musicians. It's free to the public, and there's a free will offering basket, and people put money in it, and all of the money goes to the musician. So it's good all the way around, and I'm sure she'd be interested in local classical guitarist playing on a Wednesday night.
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Last but not least, before we go into the Parks Department report, we've got Jennifer with some programming updates about different things going on, stewardship events and learning opportunities and other things in our parks. Ms. Hoppe.
Thank you, Liz, and thanks everyone. It's exciting to hear about all the activities that are taking place and all the investments people are making in our cultural capacity, in our parks, and in our community overall. So thank you for that. We're gearing up for, we're getting ready for spring. This Saturday, March 13th at Highbridge, we're gonna have the second Saturday's bike share and trail work party with the New York City Mountain Biking Association, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. They're also now, they've expanded their programs now in partnership with 2 additional local schools, which is great. So if you want to go see what they're up to, head over there this Saturday. With the Friends of J. Hood Wright, we also have a stewardship project this Saturday at Haven Avenue and 176th Street, the 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Friends of J. Hood have been invaluable, not only in J. Hood Wright proper, helping work alongside my gardeners in the garden beds there and overall park upkeep. They've also taken on stewardship of the ramp that leads from J. Hood Wright down to the Little Red Lighthouse, or down to Riverside Drive. Gets you closer to the Little Red Lighthouse, which is phenomenal. And they've sort of adopted it. And every second Saturday, they work to bolster improvements at that site. On Sunday, March 14th at 10 a.m., the Fort Tryon Park Trust and dog owners are coming together to do spring prep on Manhattan's largest dog run in Fort Tryon. If that's not your thing, with the Urban Park Rangers at Seaman and Isham entrance to Inwood Hill Park on Sunday at 11. There's a raptor watch. We've had some red-shouldered hawks up here. Obviously, we have red-tailed hawks and we have eagle sightings and owl sightings. So join the Urban Park Rangers Sunday at 11 for that. On the 20th of March, the Rangers are going to be doing another tour of Fort Tryon on historic New York, 1 p.m. at Ann Loftus Playground. Their last tour on geology, 99 people showed up. They were able to do safe social distancing because they had 4 Rangers. They broke into 4 groups, but people are clearly hungry for this kind of programming. So if you want to join.
I hear it rocks.
That's Saturday, March 20th at 1. Saturday, March 27th, there's going to be a Spring Migrants birding tour at 10 a.m. Also on Saturday, March 27th, the Fort Tryon Park Trust is going to be kicking off its Broadway Initiative stewardship work, 9 a.m. to 12 Saturdays. Meet at the Broadway Arden entrance to Fort Tryon Park.
Fantastic. That was an incredibly long list. If you could, shoot me.
I'll email it.
Fantastic.
Are you in Nobles?
Yes, please. And just so people know, in the minutes, we generally don't include the specific information about events that were described at length here, but which happen between now and when the minutes go out, because people don't really need that level of detail on an event that already happened. So if anybody's ever wondering why we redact it in that way, that's why. So without further ado, 7:34, I'm gonna turn it back over to Jennifer for her report on what's going on. Capital updates, and we're doing pretty well on time, so we can do a little bit of Q&A around some parks issues.
Sure. So I just wanted to let people know the New York City Parks Department is part of its effort to take another visible step in the fight to end systemic racism. Has launched a parks renaming project. They started last year in the creation of the Juneteenth Grove in Cadman Plaza Park, and planted 19 trees and painted 19 benches in the color of the Pan-African flag. Many of the groups on this call helped us in getting similar benches placed at Highbridge Park, at Isham Park, at the Dykeman Farmhouse, in Fort Tryon Park, at Inwood Hill Park, and Roger Morris Park. The commissioner and the mayor launched or unveiled the renaming of several parks across the 5 boroughs. They're now doing the next phase of the project, and they're asking for suggestions for new names through March 15th. And these selected names will be announced on June 19th. And there's a full section on the Parks Department's website about this, but when making a suggestion, their general guidelines are that the person you're naming it for is of Black African-American heritage. They've been deceased for more than 3 years. They are ideally New York City residents or natives of particular importance to New York City and or the community surrounding the park. And they were particularly instrumental to the design, development, or programming of the park or the park feature. And their contributions are readily found or accessible through public searching. Separate and apart from that, the Parks Department continues its ongoing renaming efforts. Many people on this call have participated in those. Karen Taylor, if you're still on, Jacob Morris, we did the Highbridge, the Sugar Hill Luminaries lawn at Highbridge Park, and Liz Ritter and others were instrumental in getting the Wanbash Plaza named in Highbridge Park, among others. There's some that date back years, like DeGroat Field in Woodhill Park, but please, I've been asked to help get the word out that the deadline is extended and it's March 16th. I also wanted to report back to this committee. You had shown great interest in the 2 temporary public art projects that the Parks Department had given presentations on. One was in conjunction with the Broadway Malls Association. As you may recall, it was a sculpture that was being made in Italy, and because of the pandemic, it was delayed. We're expecting that installation to go in May. And similarly, you saw a presentation from an artist for an art installation in honor of Margaret Corbin for the Linden Terrace, and that's going to be installed likely late May, early June. So we're really excited that those are being brought to fruition. We are going to
How long will the Margaret Corbin piece be up?
likely for a year.
Okay.
Sometimes they're extended if there's sort of universal community demand. I think past the year, it may require the Public Design Commission, which is the mayoral entity that oversees all of the public realm. It may be subject to that. Also, this committee has been very involved in the development and the progress of concessions. I'm pleased to report we expect in the near term, the law department is going to give the Parks Department the green light on releasing a request for proposals for the New Leaf restaurant. So once that does get released, I'll be sure to circulate it to the board. So you can help make sure local businesses, restaurateurs are aware of that opportunity and take advantage of it. And of course, we'll reach out to the Business Improvement District and the elected officials.
And also the Business Development Committee.
Yep.
Or the Economic Development Committee. And I think the Licensing Committee as well.
Well, we might leave that up to the district manager then, sure, if there are multiple committees. Okay. I also wanted to let this committee know, since so many people here care about Inwood's Forest, we have probably a well-meaning, well-intentioned effort is underway, but it's causing harm to the forest. The Clove is the most sensitive area in the mapped Shirakapak Nature Preserve, the 145 acres within the 195 acres of Inwood Hill Park. Someone has built a campfire circle and a teepee structure. They've installed a brick patio. They're bringing in non-native plants. As a result, it was already an area that was a bit compromised, but with all of this human traffic on it, but there's been soil compaction. It's not ideal. We've lost the leaf litter layer on the forest floor, which is vital for the bugs and then the birds. Rather than, we've tried removing it and people continue to erect it. we're working with some local advocates to reach out to folks who are involved in that and to try to help them understand that this is actually harming the forest and the fires that have been set there, not necessarily by the people who've erected the structure, but by other people. It's obviously a great threat to the forest, given how heavily treed it is. So we want the community to have a benefit. So what we'll be doing is we'll be doing an installation, reforestation project there, of native trees, working with the Parks Department's natural areas group, the Natural Resources group. And ideally, we'd like to involve the community in that replanting effort. So when the date gets set, I'll reach out again. But I wanted this committee to know, and people on the call to know, that erecting structures in the forest, particularly those of wood, and attracting campfires is highly problematic. So we'd love people's support in helping educate folks about the damage that that's causing. We touched a little bit earlier, Maggie was asking, and there were a few questions in the chat as well. COVID restrictions and the special event permit process. The governor did make sort of a new declaration that outside events could host up to 200 people. Obviously, New York City is very different from other parts of New York State. When something happens, it's pretty easy that a crowd will be generated, an ancillary crowd. So the city's Department of Health and the permit offices and the city's citywide special events office will be coordinating to determine the rollout of different caps and what safety parameters will be required. And it's not, unfortunately, I don't have an answer tonight because obviously it's a bit of an iterative process, but I expect sometime in the near term. Tennis permits has come up in this committee. If you purchased and received a tennis permit in 2020, you will get a new one for the 2021 season in the mail. There is no need to reapply for your tennis permit, and there is no additional charge. And sports permits, field and court permits are now available for low and moderate risk sports for the spring and summer. So the Parks Department's permit office is currently reviewing permit requests and issuing permits.
Sorry, what's a low and moderate? Like what would those be?
Football and basketball aren't generally low contact sports. Baseball, soccer. And I think that's it on announcements. And you wanted me to talk about capital projects?
Only to the extent that there's new information from what you reported last month.
There is.
Fantastic.
Just another plug. If you haven't already, Dyckman Rest is a $5 million investment that the city's making at the gateway to Highbridge Park. It's at Nagel Avenue and Dyckman Street, right at the 1 train. It's a real opportunity to get a new park amenity that ushers people into Highbridge Park. I understand that the School Construction Authority is building a new school nearby. And we heard from NYCHA residents that their playgrounds are already overcrowded. So just thinking with more children coming through that area, that might be an opportunity for expanding play space. So please help us get the word out. We want a broad cross section of the public providing input into the Dyckman Rest project, and the public comment period closes tomorrow night at midnight. That said, when a schematic design is completed, it'll obviously come before this community. But before the designers put pen to paper, it's always great to hear everybody's concerns and input. The Maggie, this will be of interest to you. The section of Manhattan Waterfront Greenway that runs from 180th Street to Dykeman Street, it's over a mile because of the Dykeman switchback ADA bike ramp at the north end. It's going to be closing for reconstruction as part of a citywide retaining wall contract. There are parts of that historic wall that are super old, I think 100 years maybe, that will be repaired. There are also several sinkholes. And if you've ridden it, you know that there are parts of it that are extremely narrow. So during construction, we're expecting that we cannot have it open. So we're working with the Department of Transportation and the Parks Department's Planning Division on how are we rerouting pedestrians so that they can get to the lower parts of the Manhattan Waterfront Greenway, and also how can they get to the Fort Washington Waterfront and vice versa. So we'll be doing a signage plan for that and public notification to make sure people are not caught by surprise.
And when do you anticipate that shutdown-ish?
The OMB, the mayor made an announcement about capital projects sort of resuming. So a lot of projects that were sort of in the procurement pipeline have been what's called unpaused. We recognize they're not going to be able to advance them all at once. It was a considerable amount of capital projects, but the expectation is that later this spring, the bike path the contractor will be physically on site and will need to shut down.
Okay.
So before the summer. A little bit more detailed information similarly on the Inwood Nature Center, which I know is of concern to this committee. With the unpausing, we're now working towards getting a certificate to proceed from the city's Office of Management and Budget, and then intend to award the project to construction contractor. Presuming that firm is willing to take the sort of the pre-COVID rate fee that was projected, we expect construction to start late fall at that site. Similarly with Monsignor Ket, late fall, early winter construction site because it's in procurement. And lastly, probably starting sooner rather than later is the project at Ann Loftus Playground, the fountain, making ADA access into the fountain, the infrastructure for the fountain, the new adult workout area, the half basketball court, and the climbing structure. Those will likely be going into construction late May, early June.
Of this year?
Of this year. That was further along in the procurement process when the pause for COVID happened.
Great. Thank you very much. Got a question from Daryl and then Barbara.
I had a few questions. What with the renaming website as it relates to the African American History Month, can you only have one person suggestion per page? Is there any way to do multiple suggestions at the same time?
Actually, that's the next agenda item. So I want to kind of get into that as that.
It was more of a process question, so I didn't know if we wanted to get to that later.
Right. But the process is part of that conversation. So that is a great question, and I definitely want to address it. I just want to do that as part of the context of that whole conversation. So if you don't mind hanging on to that question and asking it when we're done with questions that do not relate to renaming.
And my other question was related to the structures that people are putting up in Inwood Hill Park. Do you know why they're doing this?
I think probably because of COVID, I think our parks have taken on sort of like sacred spaces, right? They're sanctuaries. A lot of people are relying on them for mental health. I think, maybe the thought was that this is, a place for centering one's thoughts. I don't think there was any malintent. but I can't say why. It's happened elsewhere in the forest, and the urban park rangers have met, with that gentleman and have explained to him why it's problematic.
Okay.
We didn't have such a positive experience when my staff went and tried to, dismantle it because it was the soil compaction issue.
Right. Okay.
They were verbally.
Last, you mentioned the Monsignor Ket being in the fall and winter. Does that include the comfort station, or is that separate?
That's a good question. Since that's an architectural contract, I will find out. I believe they were on the same timeline because the design was completed at the same time. So I will find out.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Barbara?
Okay, and 9 unmuted. Concerning Monsignor Ket and also the Ann Loftus, in both the Monsignor Ket meetings and then both the scoping and the community board meeting, and then also at the Loftus, there were numerous suggestions that were well received and then hopefully incorporated, but we never see the plans back, sort of like the final plans. Could you just submit them to the committee so that as committee members, we could look at them? For example, there was discussion with Monsignor Ket about acknowledging that it was the Dykeman Negro Leagues that were there. Some form of, you said tile was not possible, but some sort of commemoration, and that was going to be thought about. Also, that in the comfort stations, there was going to be some kind of way of just maybe with a benches or some pegs or something, incorporating that it would be easier to change, things like that. And there were discussions of how the sinks would be. So anyways, we never really saw back then the plans on that. And then we never saw the final designs in terms of how the Loftus fountain would look in terms of intermittent spray jets and the final arrays. So I would like to see those and, as a committee, then see, well, what we're finally getting.
Sure, I can request those. Just so you know, the Monsignor Ket design won a Design Excellence Award from the Public Design Commission. So you can see the rendering of what is going to get built, on the press page of the Public Design Commission there. But in the meantime, I'll ask the Capital Division for it.
Yeah, I think the Monsignor Ket process was a very positive process. It was a very, very good, and that's part of the reason why the design won awards, because it was a very good and involved process. And so now with the Loftus fountain, the question is also what kind of intermittent jets are there going to be? What are the timing and such? And when you came back the second time, you really kind of weren't sure about that. And so that's what, maybe we can have a private conversation about that. Have a better.
Or you can send me your questions and I'll happily have the designers answer them.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm not an engineer. I don't know what they ultimately were able to work out given the Department of Environmental Protection's requirements.
Okay, sounds good.
Health.
Okay. Thank you. We got a couple of quick questions from attendees. I'm looking for Deborah Barrett, but she appears to have left. She had her hand up earlier. Nope, I think she's no longer on the call unless if she's dialing in on the phone. Nope, that's Obed. Okay, so I'm gonna recognize, next up, we've got Maggie Clark has a question for, and actually Maggie, just before you answer your question, somebody in the chat wants to know what time is that Haven Avenue cleanup on Saturday? Does that start at 10 o'clock?
Am I on mute?
You're unmuted, yes.
Okay. It is at 10 a.m. at Haven and 176th.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And yeah, Maggie, what's your question?
Okay, well, it's a couple. So I was on the Greenway on my bike twice today, went down to 72nd Street and back, and glad to see that you're going to be redoing the upper part. I'd like to know how many months it's going to be out of commission. You said it would start maybe in spring, but didn't say how long it would be out of commission. That's one thing. Another,
4 months is the projection,
okay.
weather
Well,
allowing.
okay, sure. I hope it'll be wider in all points.
It won't be, because the Department of Transportation is not redesigning the highway. It'll stay within its same footprint.
Because as you probably know, some of it is maybe 3 feet wide.
Yes, I bike it also.
And that's you know, that's unsafe.
It's definitely not ideal, but at the moment, the city is not planning on redesigning the highway, and capturing space into the highway travel lanes would be the only way to make the bike path wider.
Okay, well, hopefully this committee can speak to the Transportation Committee about this particular item. So another Greenway issue is I've been speaking with Congressman Espaillat's office about trying to commit some funding for finishing some projects that you've started or that are on your drawing boards. For example, the water level route from the lighthouse to what is the ending of the current one from Dyckman Street. And, you know, my understanding is that it's on your drawing board, so shovel ready, if you will.
It is not shovel ready. We
Okay.
did bring the Department of Environmental Conservation out there, DEC, because ultimately we would have to get permits from them.
Yeah.
Because we'd be cantilevering out over the waterways and the environmental impact. And then the other issue, of course, is we would have to get an easement through Amtrak's property. We don't own continuous land outboard of the rail line. So that would be a pretty extensive negotiation.
So can I?
The long-term vision is for, you know, it to be brought to fruition for sure.
How much is that section going to cost?
It's going, well, the last time it was estimated, I think, was about 4 years ago when they were investigating a federal Tiger grant for it. But it's going to have to be modified to today's construction dollars and bidding prices and.
Right. But what was that estimate 4 years ago? Understanding that it's old.
I think at one point it was 65 million was the projection, depending on, you know, and that didn't account for any easement filing costs or.
Okay, and so it'll be all right for me to send Congressman Espaillat's people to talk to you about this?
Sure, I think I've spoken to them in the past about it.
Okay,
I'd be happy to
good.
speak further with them.
Okay, and the final question is about non-motorized vehicles on the Greenway. It's increasing. At one point, I was estimating as I was sitting there on a bench enjoying the day, you know, 1 out of 3 vehicles was motorized. And in fact, we saw 5 actual vehicles, not Parks vehicles, you know, going on the Greenway. 4 of them were in a convoy. It looked like it might have been a movie shoot. I couldn't quite tell, but you know, it's like a cowboy land out there, you know. And
was it Port Authority contractors? Because they
No.
are doing
Oh,
work
well.
on the bridge. Where was it, Maggie?
Let's see. The 4 or 5 of them were well south of the bridge, maybe around 150th or thereabouts.
Okay, I can let my colleagues to the south know.
Yeah, yeah, it was out of this district. So you know, but the whole Greenway has got problems, and they're increasing, and no one's enforcing, and we're really early in the year, and it's going to be a lot worse. It's not wide enough for all the traffic that happens in the summer, and I hope you have plans, in not only in our area. I'm sorry that you're not widening it. That's really, really upsetting.
Maggie, I really need to move the agenda. We hear you on that point, but it's completely outside of the scope of this conversation. So I'd like to move on and recognize our next person with a hand up, Cassandra Collazo.
Hello, can anyone hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hi, my message, and I have a message and a question for Jennifer Hoppa. Hi, Jennifer, my name is Cassandra, and I'm the senior Inwood Girl Scout troop leader. And I just want to say that the Urban Park Rangers have done amazing work with my Girl Scouts and the programs that they've been offering.
Wait, are you troop 1?
No, we're 3205.
3205, okay.
Yeah, we were able to have the experience of having a red-tailed hawk released, and that was amazing. I have it on video, and the girls, I've sent the girls for so many workshops. I just want to give a big shout out to Ranger Rob. He is amazing.
He's fabulous.
He is. We love him. Now, my question is, I'm also the mom of an alumni of PSMS 278 2020 year. We had 2 young boys tragically drowned that year in Inwood Hill Park. And unfortunately, we were not able to do any kind of memorial service for them because right after they had drowned, everything shut down for COVID.
Right.
So, so this year, again, I reached out to Ranger Rob, my go-to person, and we're arranging to have a tree planted in Inwood Hill Park, which would be, of course, amazing. But I wanted to know, a lot of the parents feel strongly about having some kind of plaque there. So when I spoke to Ranger Rob, he said, well, you can't just put a plaque on a tree or on the ground, but you can do it maybe on a bench.
You can. I can send, if you email me, I can send you. The service department has a whole protocol for both tree planting and for bench plaques so that it's consistent, transparent, and predictable. So my email is Jennifer.Hoppa, Hoppa, at parks.nyc.gov. And I'm happy to put you in touch with the woman who manages that. And we'd love to have some sort of dedication ceremony or gathering at the north end of Dykeman Street or wherever you want to have it.
Okay, that's great, Jennifer. Thank you so much. And again, the programs are just amazing, and we're just going to keep participating.
Thank you so much for helping us steward our parks.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jennifer.
The Scouts.
And Cassandra, thank you very much for asking that question. There was somebody else, anonymous attendee, so I don't know who also had a question about the tree planting and plaque. So anonymous attendee, if you want to reach out to Cassandra and work on this together. I'm guessing you know each other since you're both alumni parents of MS 278. And when you do make whatever that arrangement is with Parks, if you can please let me know, let the board know so that we can blast that information out. That was incredibly sad. And you know, there's a whole community that mourned those two boys, not just the MS 278 community. And I think other people would want to know that this is happening and be a part of it as well.
Okay, thank you so much. I will definitely keep you in the loop. And thank you again, Jennifer.
Sure. And I'm so sorry that that happened. Horrendous.
Thank
I don't
you
know how
again.
to put this in chat without answering someone else's questions. Sorry.
Yeah. If you go to anonymous attendee,
Okay.
under answered questions,
Okay.
that's somebody who asked that. So yeah, if you put
Got
the
it.
information there, that should
Okay.
work. I wish we had a less clunky way of doing this.
Oh, I see now. I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you go into answered questions, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, everyone.
You bet. All right, I think that's all of the questions for this part. So I'd like to move to the next agenda item, which
I just saw one thing from Obed.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. The reason that I didn't answer that is
Oh, he
it kind
left.
of relates, it relates to parks naming. So I was
Okay, I'm
I was
sorry.
gonna get to that. That's quite all right. So we've got this very, very large issue around parks renamings. I was contacted by somebody at the Port Authority who wanted to know, wanted some more information about Jean Lee Poggi so that they could possibly look into, renaming the Dolphin Park after her. So they're going to get back to me and get back to the West 181st Street Beautification Project on how that works. I know that in the immediate wake of James's death, there are a lot of people who want to do something commemorative for him at the North Cove, and I think that's appropriate. But the conversation on exactly what that would be, I feel like, is maybe a little bit premature since it sort of just happened and we're all really raw about that. There's this ongoing conversation that we've had in the committee that started with Bennett Park and has really branched out district-wide and is happening at the same time as the Parks Department's conversation around renaming for African Americans parks in various, throughout the city. Daryl asked a really good question about what the process is. And, can we just rename one or is it several? My understanding is that for the purpose of this particular initiative around renaming or naming parks throughout the 5 boroughs for African Americans, is that they're looking for, 1 or 2 specific suggestions of a person and a particular park. Our larger initiative that we sort of started talking about last month, where we had a list of, there were like 25 different places and many, many different names. I think it's appropriate for us to let the Parks Department in on the breadth and depth of what we're considering here. But I think there's 51 community boards. And I think if the Parks Department got, that comprehensive a list from every single community board, they would kind of, their heads would sort of explode. So I think we're going to have to kind of recognize that we have the opportunity to do something very big and to have this be a continuing process. And also with particular regard to the African American and anti-racism work that the Parks Department is doing, have 1 or 2 very specific recommendations in that renaming project. So I'm sure Jennifer's going to have a little bit more input that's process driven, that more closely answers Daryl's question. But in terms of framing our conversation, I think we're kind of doing 2 things at once. Jennifer.
I think given the unmet demand of public spaces and adequate representation and recognition, there are going to be a lot of proposals that the agency is going to receive. So I feel like if your goal is to have something included in the next round, you're having consensus and making a recommendation for one specific site is probably going to help ensure you get something as part of this round. If you're less interested in sort of timeframes, you don't have to be a part of this, overall process. You can, take your time and deliberate and go through your whole list. But I think the more consensus there is, the greater the likelihood that, the committee reviewing all of this will say, okay, there's consensus. Here's their request, and here's their response as to why this should happen. Sort of minimizes further research having to be done, or, well, when would there be consensus, or because it's a pretty tight time frame. Am I?
Yeah, that's your guys.
You can see my son, hear my son. Sorry.
It's quite all right. We're all operating with offices and our families are in them just on the other side of the door. So don't ever, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Everybody who's a parent and everybody who's a child deserves an effing award. So don't ever feel like you got to apologize for the noise that your kids are making or be embarrassed if they like barge into a Zoom.
So I don't want to take away from the important work that the committee has been doing, sort of looking at it holistically. So I would endorse that ongoing process. And, my hope is that all the arts groups that chime in, I hope that sort of the wonderful discussions that have come out of that serves as great fuel for maybe some programs and artistic expression versus something static like a name, comes out of those. But if the board does feel more strongly or have more consensus about a particular site, I would take advantage of this current initiative.
Okay. So one thing that I just want to be clear on in terms of process. So the deadline for this next iteration is the 16th. Okay, that's really good, because so what I'd like for this committee to do this evening is, continue to hold this ongoing conversation that we're having, around Bennett Park and around that long list that started with, Daryl's really solid work and our driving tour. And that included, that very long list of names that has been sort of crowdsourced, not only here, but sort of gathered from people's input in various forums that have dumped into this. But try and come up with one or at most two specific names and specific places for this round that is focused on African-American history in the city and in the neighborhood, and sort of put a hold on some of these other the other aspects of the conversation that we're having. If everybody on the committee can turn on their cameras so that I can get sort of the thumbs up or body language that suggests that that feels like a reasonable approach. Going once, going twice. Okay, cool. So then thinking in terms of, so you know what, I'm going to shut up and I'm going to take a lap through the committee. If you can use the raise hand feature, and I'm seeing Daryl first.
Hi again. Just real quick, Jennifer, could you also explain the timeline for, I know there are other communities besides the African-American community that you're also doing this for. So can you also just walk us through what that time frame is?
I'm unmuted, right?
Yeah, you are unmuted. Yeah. We can hear you.
I don't know what the time frame is for that, Daryl. You may have heard the Parks Commissioner is leaving.
You can't just drop that on me like that.
He later this spring, early this summer, he will be moving on. So I don't know what.
Do you know the other communities? I know one was LGBT. I can't remember the other.
Yeah, I'll pull up. So the other renaming efforts, it just says every year parks across the city are renamed for local figures supported by the community. If you have a naming suggestion in mind that does not meet the criteria for this particular project, you can still gather community support and reach out to us. You can send your suggestions to a local elected official or community board representative, or you can send letters of support from the community to naming.suggestions@parks.nyc. Future projects will allow us to serve more communities with opportunities for renaming parks after other BIPOC or LGBTQ figures. So those, I think it's, those, there's this effort, and then there's going to be those two other groups. I don't know who will be spearheading it. I imagine that arts and antiquities and public programs and partnership development units will continue in their work. But I don't know that set timeframes have been made for those. I know the commissioner had obviously done the whole Juneteenth initiative, but so again, if as an individual or if this community board feels strongly that a certain person, dignitary, luminary get more recognition, you can pull together a resolution and send that demonstrating community support. I don't think you have to wait for a whole big initiative, right? We did the Luminaries, Sugar Hill Luminaries lawn just from this committee resolution and
right. So I think that just process-wise, I'd like to be able to come to some consensus for recommendations in this imminent round, and that would actually get approved not through the full board, but through the executive committee, which is meeting on Monday, so that we can get that to you in time for your Tuesday deadline. And then we would continue to work and have a resolution that was broader and hit more constituencies within the community and included, obviously not all of the naming opportunities, because you want to leave some things for the future, but that had a more comprehensive package that reflects this much broader conversation that we're having, and that would be a resolution that would go to the Parks Department in the same way that, Juan Bosch and Sugar Hill Luminaries lawn and other such things went. Does that make sense to people? Does that feel like a reasonable process? Okay.
Yes.
Fantastic. So thoughts on what would really fit into this latest round? One of the things that had come up at the really excellent discussion that Daryl and I were fortunate enough to attend virtually was Basquiat. Wouldn't that be nice? So how do
he's from Uptown? He's from Uptown, right?
He is. He's not from Washington Heights.
Right. He's from Uptown.
But he is from Uptown.
Mm-hmm.
So do people have thoughts on A, liking that idea, and B, suggestions on what would be?
Do you want to go through the list maybe, and then that way we can hear them all, yes, and then maybe we all chime in?
That is what I am looking. I'm vamping. The sound you hear is me vamping for time, trying to find.
I smell burning wood.
Yeah, the hamsters are running on the wheel.
Literally and figuratively.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Daryl, do you have that list handy by any chance?
Or remember some names off the top of your head that were on it?
That's a good question. I haven't.
Okay, I found it. So there's Bennett Park, Bennett. So if that's a name that we're thinking we would like to propose, then I would assume we would want to be looking more towards something in the southern part of the district.
Is that a question for the committee?
Yes.
So not Bennett Park, like just kind of have the name and
I think Bennett Park, we're putting kind of a thumbtack in that.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that would be a little bit more fitting, just closer, to his center, if you will.
Liz, can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
I'm not sure I understand what's happening. Are we thinking of renaming just some park in our area and we're brainstorming ideas for said park?
Correct. So we're doing, in a broader context, we are doing two different things in terms of naming parks in our district. In a very broad context, we would be looking to have, and not at this meeting, we're kind of putting a pause on that. We would be looking to consider not only what is a better name for Bennett Park, but also what are other parks in our district that we would want to name and after whom, in a broad package that included multiple renamings or multiple namings. And that's something that there isn't a specific timeline for. What I'd like to accomplish this evening is one or two specific recommendations for names of parks in our district or portions of parks in our district, playgrounds, lawns, what have you, to recommend for this latest round of namings after African Americans, the deadline for which is March 16th.
Got it. So Basquiat is one name that was on this list of names and okay, so that's what you're pulling up now.
I'm looking for, I was looking for the list of parks and I realized that the list of names is that we had come up with is actually going to be in the minutes of the December meeting.
I just emailed you, Liz. I think it's the most recent list of the parks we discussed.
Okay.
Also, I'm just thinking out loud. Shouldn't it be a longer conversation? Like deciding which parks people are open to having renamed. I mean, can we just sort of arbitrarily choose parks or?
Yes, it should absolutely be part of a longer conversation, which is why I said that what I would like to do is think of this in two pieces. One immediate piece, which I would like to conclude this evening, is one or two specific recommendations on a park or a portion of a park to be renamed after or named after an African American with some connection to this neighborhood as part of our response to the next round of renamings for this purpose by the Parks Department. That's one thing. The second piece is a much more comprehensive, much broader set of namings as part of this conversation that we have been having since November, October, it's been a while, that every month we keep adding something new to, in a good way, because it's an iterative conversation. So yes, the community should be involved, but that's not what I'm looking to pass a resolution on this evening. Does that help?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Great, great. So with that in mind, since it is almost 8:30, I'd like to kind of get to some kind of conclusion on that narrower conversation and hit pause on the broader conversation, which, Obed, if you're still listening, would also speak to your question about the possibility of naming the North Cove in honor of James Cataldi. Okay.
Which would be premature at this point, given the 3-year threshold that the
Also correct, but I don't think it's a great use of our time to name all of the reasons why we're not talking about something. I think we should just not discuss it. All right, minutes. So Daryl, if you could take a look at, while I'm looking for the minutes of the last meeting, if you could pull out some names from the list you just sent me of some of the further south options.
There weren't that many further south. I know, like, there were some in and around the center of Highbridge Park. There's a rec center, and there's lawns south of there.
Mm-hmm.
See what else? There's a bit around the Morris Jamel mansion. There's a Green Street at 169th and Broadway. Or no, that's already named.
That's already named. That's Juan
That's named.
Pablo Duarte Square.
Right.
I mean, technically it's a triangle, but we call it a square, so that's already named.
Right.
So I'm thinking the lawn. There's that large lawn south of the rec center. It is a lawn where it's often used for cultural events. The terraced area by the Highbridge Tower is actually where, for a couple of years, we had the art stroll. There's certainly been plenty of arts and cultural events in those spaces. There's been the Danza dance festival in the pool after they drain it after the season, which is like the most fun thing ever. So thoughts on that?
That sounds fitting to me. I can't really recall the place you're describing off the top of my head, but it sounds exactly up the alley. What is that, like the 130s maybe?
No. It's 170. So the Highbridge Rec Center is at like
sorry. It's
174.
Yes.
So this is south of the rec center. So it would be
Okay.
like the lawn. It's a big lawn. It goes, if you're standing in front of the 33rd precinct at 171st Street, you're looking across the street to the southern perimeter of that lawn, which then extends up for, I love what you're doing right now. You're doing that thing that everybody is doing, which in order to see the thing in your mind's eye, you're closing your eyes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
That lawn doesn't have a name.
Do they do any art installations there? Because there'd be one thing, it's pretty cool to have cultural events there and stuff, but like, is there anything art related there outside of cultural events?
We have the Wildlife Festival there. We used to have the Latin concert series there. Get the fall field day there.
Whoa, Jennifer, you sound like you've been kidnapped and the ransomers are calling us for money.
Or she has a larynx, either or.
Yeah, you got.
Jennifer, hello.
Yeah.
Maybe my internet is bad.
I think so.
I think Zoom's giving up. It said 8:30. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'll sign out and log back in.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, because I mean, like when I'm thinking about that area, and I know it's too high up, obviously. So I'm just saying this as an example. But the skate park, I'm not sure if that's a part of Highbridge.
Yes,
but like it is. Like if that were a part of this, which I know it's not, that would make complete sense. You know, a place where expression is done from art and cultural events. I just, if it's just a field without like a wall, that maybe there could be installations on the wall or something from like local graffiti artists or something like that. I just, or a handball court or something. Is there anything outside of a field?
There isn't anything in the space. So there have been artsy festivals, but there isn't anything like a wall or, I mean, there's the side of the rec center itself, but because that's landmarked, you know, you couldn't really tag
Yeah,
that.
right. Yeah. Or paint on it. Like
No.
Yeah.
There isn't the walkway to the Highbridge, like goes through that lawn, right?
Yes. So you would walk, there's a, you know, sort of a wending paved walkway that then goes to the southern end of the terrace for the Highbridge water tower. And then the stairs going down are right there. And then you can go down and then you hang that left and there's maybe 50 yards to the entrance of the Highbridge. But I'm intrigued by the idea of the area where the skate park is.
If that's not named, that would be a perfect.
Yes, you are not wrong. I am happy to be corrected. Jennifer, the area where the skate park is. God, I wish Ryan Dessa were on this call.
I know, right? Oh my God, this is like his
God.
moment. Out of all the years he's come to this meeting, this is his moment.
Yes, I don't want to.
Just right now, it's just named. It's like the Alexander Hamilton Bridge Skate Park.
So I can't even begin to tell you how much I love this idea.
I think it's perfect. I mean, not to pat myself on the back, but like every single time I drive by that with my car.
I'll do it.
Thanks, Liz. Every time I drive by it with my car, I always think of Basquiat when I see it. And I mean, I know why, but it's always been innate. Like just there.
Oh, I see, it's stuff like this that makes me feel stupid because like, why didn't I think of that? Because as soon as you said it, it's so obvious. But yeah, I totally didn't think of that. So all props to you. I think we're done here. Can everybody turn their cameras on? All the voting members. We got thoughts on this. Do we have other suggestions? We like this idea. Haven't really heard much from you, Francisco or Alexis, on this issue.
So is this assuming that we're going with the Basquiat idea, or this is just deciding on that particular area?
I think going on the Basquiat idea. I mean, I love the idea of naming it after Basquiat, and we did not have, looking at the list of names that we had come up with, crowdsourced, there were not a lot of African Americans on the name, and one of them was, somebody's got some background noise happening that's super distracting.
There we go.
Like a radio. Okay. Was Lerone Bennett, who, you know, I'd love to keep in the mix for consideration at Bennett Park, but that feels like, as to my earlier point, has a much larger conversation.
I think I'm opposed to this Basquiat idea.
Okay.
I just quickly Googled. I'm not sure what that echo is.
Hey, Alexis, I think you gotta go on mute.
So I just quickly Googled him, and it looks like he's born in Brooklyn, spent most of his time in Brooklyn, died in Brooklyn, like was buried in Brooklyn. So I guess I'm not sure if I'm missing something or if someone can provide a brief summary of what was said about him. But I just based off of what I'm reading, I would say I'm not in favor of that.
So Basquiat's very Brooklyn based. It is true, but the thing of his art is very the
Harlem Renaissance. He took like a lot of inspiration from the Harlem Renaissance. And it's like straight up in his work. So even though, you know, he might be a native of Brooklyn, and I thought that he definitely spent time in Harlem, but I guess not. But his work, there is no ifs, ands, or buts, is a complete modernization of Harlem Renaissance work. So it would be more of an ode than it would be a monument to his locality.
Yeah, and that's really consistent with the Parks Department sort of guidelines on the extent to which a suggested person could be, but does not necessarily have to be tied. He's very evocative of that space, but there's also something about the sort of edgy quality of his work that screams skateboard park ethos. And that's sort of in my mind what is so perfect about it.
Got it.
Liz,
I mean, I appreciate the explanation, but just my opinion is no to this choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would much rather prefer us rename one of our parks in our area. I mean, there are a ton of parks in Brooklyn that could, you know, assign Basquiat. I think that it would make more sense for us to choose somebody who grew up in this, who was born here, you know, did work in this community and died in this community. That would be my opinion.
Okay.
And I would, though, just reiterate that the call that we were on, the folks were definitely very much like, you know, the person doesn't have to be from that community, you know, because I think many of them do have broader New York City national significance. So just putting that out there as well.
Do they have to be deceased?
Yes.
3 years.
Oh boy. Okay.
Can I just ask a question? I have my hand.
Yeah.
Okay, the suggestion came up at the panel discussion. I would assume that it's already in front of the Parks Department, probably tied to another park. Is that a fair assumption? Since it was one of the panelists that suggested that.
Right. So the question that was posed was, you know, what people thought, and it was the nephew of, I forget his name, but he is himself an artist.
Right.
I'm blanking on his name. Classic Harlem Renaissance African-American writer. It's my favorite part of menopause. I can't remember anything. And he said, yeah, Basquiat, that would be someone after that would be at the top of my list. But that was him thinking in the moment. That was not him making a recommendation to the Parks Department. I have no idea what other recommendations they've had, which is why, however, I would like to make maybe 2 suggestions so that if they don't like one of our suggestions, they might, or one of our suggestions sort of is trumped, not that we can use that word anymore, by some other suggestion, that we still have one that's a live suggestion. Alexis.
I have a suggestion then.
Oh, yes, Sally. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there.
I would love to name a park after Obie Bean.
After whom?
Obie Bean. Obie Bean, who is
It has been 3 years, right? It has been 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Probably close enough. Yes.
Yeah, that's a very good one, Sally. Very good.
Okay. I like it.
I mean, that would be Bennett Park, basically.
No.
No?
I don't
No,
know.
that's right. He lives in the 160s. He was in the 160s.
He lived on 169. so
Right. He wasn't up here. Yep.
That would be that lawn by Highbridge.
Yep. It would be that lawn. Yeah. That could work.
Okay. Alexis, and then Daryl.
I'm all for the Basquiat idea.
Okay.
I think it's could bring another layer to activity and different things that be created just by that naming.
Okay.
So I'm a go.
Cool. All right. Thank you, Daryl.
Yeah. I just had a question for Jennifer, I guess. Is there anything named after Constance Baker Motley? You're muted.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Sorry. I believe so. Let me check.
And then while you're looking as well, I mean, though we know this is on there yet, but David Dinkins, I know he doesn't fulfill one of the requirements, but I imagine something should be held in his honor.
I can imagine he's going to be getting a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think it's safe to assume that the Harlem community is going to come, so Board 9, Board 10 are going to come up with an appropriate.
He was nearby, I think.
Yes.
But Constance Baker Motley is an interesting one.
Well, and Constance Baker Motley lived at 409 Edgecombe, not 555 Edgecombe. But is she a daughter of Washington Heights?
Mm-hmm. I mean, can we submit 3? I know we were going for 1 or 2. I mean, because if we were to do Obi Bing Field, which is the one that you originally brought up, Liz, I think that's a great point from Sally. Basquiat Skate Park, and we can vote on these obviously. And Constance Baker Motley. I mean, I don't know where we'd want that, but she's a force. Like I'm just reading her Wikipedia page, and
my guess is she's getting a site.
I
mean, the Parks Department has historic photos of her. And knowing
On a lot of those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea of Constance Baker Motley, but there is not any. I mean, she was one of the Sugar Hill luminaries that drove the renaming of the Sugar Hill Luminaries lawn. So while I agree that it totally makes sense to have something named after her, we don't have anything in the immediate area unless there's oh wait.
Do you know where how far that district went at the time? I don't know.
I don't know, but is there anything across at the very southern tip of Highbridge Park? There's the playground that's named for the Coogans Bluff playground. And there's that other little playground, but is there anything else in that very southern end of Highbridge Park that makes sense?
There's a lawn between Coogans Bluff Playground and Adventure Playground.
That's like right across the street from 409.
It's across the street from the mansion, actually, where it's
Oh,
actually
yeah,
lawn.
okay.
Yeah, it's the backside of Morris Jamel Mansion across Amsterdam.
Okay. So how do people feel about, and I know it's 3, which is more than 2, but to Danielle's point, there is a high degree of likelihood that someone in Brooklyn is going to come up with something for Basquiat. And if someone does, I'm not heartbroken to lose that. And if no one does, then I feel like that's a solid recommendation. I love the idea of naming something for Obi. I think it's really appropriate, and it's nice that there's something, you know, pretty near to his home that kind of calls out for a name. And although that little slice of Highbridge Park isn't directly across from 409, it's a couple of blocks away from 409, where Constance Baker Motley lived for, you know, it was like decades. So that those three things feel like pretty solid suggestions to me. Show of hands, body language, thumbs up.
And you
smiles.
said the Motley Park, because I'm looking at Google Maps right now, is behind Morris Island Mansion, but not on the property, but in Highbridge Park across the street.
Right, across Edgecombe Avenue.
Yep.
Right, you see that little area?
Yeah, it's like a little sliver here. You got Coogans Bluff or whatever. What
Yep.
section of that is like directly behind?
Pretty
Yeah,
much.
it's directly across from the mansion, the backside of the mansion.
What kind of things go on there?
That's a problematic site. So I was going to raise that if Alexis didn't.
Yeah, I mean, she's definitely someone to be celebrated. I also,
It seems like a remnant, that space.
I see.
Yeah,
So it doesn't feel proper.
right.
It doesn't feel like it's honoring her.
Exactly. She's amazing.
You know, I wanted to say for Constance Baker Motley, especially because she was so academic and such an intellectual. If you want, it's not in Community Board 12, but that triangle, when you get off the #1 train, that little park triangle as you walk up to City College, that little vest park, you know what I'm talking about?
157th Street?
No.
No, you're talking
137
Montefiore Park?
No, I don't, was it 137th Street?
Montefiore Park.
Is that what it's called?
Yes, it has a name, and while I agree with you that naming something near City College would be wonderful in many ways, I suspect there is a community of people who's deeply invested in the naming of a park after Moses Montefiore.
Oh, I think so too. I
Who
didn't
would
realize
not
it was
appreciate
named.
having it renamed.
No, I think, I agree. But I, something like
Being
that.
a member of that community.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would rename
I
that.
mean, I did have another thought on it, and I know it's further north than we were talking about, but the actual rec center itself at Highbridge.
Wow.
I mean,
that's a great suggestion, Daryl. That's not already named?
Big.
Yeah, it's called the Highbridge Rec Center.
Oh, holy yo, I like that. I like that a lot.
I mean, it's something we have to be confident on because it's like one of the biggest naming
Again,
opportunities.
You know, I disagree because for Constance Baker Motley, it would be much more appropriate to name a school or name a park, something like that. A rec center is not where she's at.
Can I just posit that the Highbridge Park Rec Center has after-school programming, a broad range of community programming. It's not just dodgeball, you know?
It's an institution.
So name it after Satchel Paige.
Wasn't Satchel Paige, where's he
Or
from?
name it after one of the leaders that were in the Negro Leagues at the Dyckman Fields.
But if you can't even name them, though, Barbara, like,
That's a problem, isn't it?
Well,
I mean-
I think there are field opportunities for those individuals.
I think there's a lot of opportunities also in Alabama or Missouri where they're from, like, and they lived.
Actually, some were from Dominican Republic.
Right. So I also
Right.
do want to say that one of the things that came out of one of the reasons why I haven't specifically mentioned the Negro Leagues is one of the things that came up at the Dyckman scoping meeting is that we need to seriously consider renaming the Dyckman Rest after the Negro Leagues, but that would really come in the context of that project. So we don't need to, waste a name in this cycle on that, because I think we're going to get that through that other process.
Deborah shaking her head, yes. So we
Yeah.
all agree.
Can we vote? Can we vote on this?
I think we're about ready to do that, but I see that we've got Alexis's hand up.
So about the part that's behind the mansion, that section, we were just talking about the lawn.
Yep.
There's Larry Neal, who was a pioneer in Black theater, worked closely with the Mary Baraka. His wife still lives on Jumel Terrace, and I think something like that would be more appropriate for something naming, I think Larry would be a great person to name something like that area over.
Okay. Okay. Maybe not in this cycle, because I think that part of what the Parks Department is looking for is sort of larger, more broadly well-known. I feel like
I think that bit of park and the fact that he lived on Jumel Terrace and his wife still lives there, that should be something to consider.
Put it up for a vote.
Okay, what's his name again? Can't hear you. Alexa.
Larry Neal.
Larry.
N-E-A-L. Larry Neal.
Okay.
I'll text
I got it.
Struggle bus with the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, well,
It happens to all of us. Trust me.
yeah, and Aisha is actually not here because she texted me a picture of her Spectrum something or other that said, "We're sorry, your Wi-Fi is out." So
Okay, I'll put it as
yeah, so
excused
she should
absence.
be excused, and also I forgot Etta is also
Excused.
Etta
Okay.
is also excused.
Cool.
Somebody's got some background noise.
I think that's you, Alexis.
No, that was Sally.
Sally? All right, sorry about that, Alexis.
Okay, so we now have 4 suggestions. OB for the Highbridge field south of the rec center, Basquiat for the skate park, Constance Baker Motley for the
Rec center.
And Larry Neal for that, I'll figure out a better way to put it, but that sliver across the street of Highbridge Park across the street from the mansion. And I understand that some people are in favor, some people might be in favor of all of those, some people might be in favor of some of them, but not in others of them. So when we vote, I'd like a thumbs up or a thumbs down individually by each so that we can figure out what the total is.
Cool.
So I'm just going to go in order that I see you in my Hollywood squares. Nobles.
Which one are we voting on?
You're right.
So what I want to do is I'm going to ask each person, because it's an easier way to tally, in the following order. OB Highbridge Rec Field. OB, the field south of the Highbridge Rec Center. Basquiat for the skate park, that's number 2. Constance Baker Motley for the rec center, that's number 3. And Larry Neal for that sliver of Highbridge Park that's across the street from the mansion. That's number 4, right?
Yep.
So when you vote, say yes to all, yes, no, no, yes, whatever your your voting is. Does that make sense to people?
Yep.
Can I just ask one question?
Yes, Sally.
Was number 4 the one that we said was the problematic area?
It is, but the reason being is because the woman, like his wife, lives across the street from that area.
Okay.
So that is a stewardship opportunity.
Correct.
And it's problematic not because it's a bad place. It's problematic because it's an interstitial space that is not a large or obvious piece of the park,
right,
and perhaps not suitably grand for Constance Baker Motley,
right,
but appropriate for a fixture of the community who was in that particular area on the order of every day.
Yep.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so Noble.
So me, ready?
Yep.
Yes to OB Bing. Yes to Basquiat Skate Park. Yes to Constance Baker Motley. Yes to Larry Neal.
So that would be yes to all?
Yes to all.
Okay. Sally.
Yes to Isaiah Obi Bing Field, and yes to the rest.
Okay. Alexis.
Yes to all.
Thank you. Daryl.
Yes to all.
Barbara.
Yeah, yes to all.
Francisco.
Yes to all.
Sally, I got you. Danielle.
Quick question.
Yes.
So Larry Neal was a professor at City College, right? I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right person on Wikipedia. It says he was a scholar of theater.
He was just a professor.
Sorry, I can't really hear you.
He was a professor. He was also a longtime neighborhood resident.
He died in 1981.
I think Alexis is trying to say he does have a lot of history outside of just being a professor.
Yeah, it looks like he was also a member of the Revolutionary Action Movement and affiliated with the Black Panther Party.
I'm cool with that.
I was laughing.
Yeah, I'm really
because why?
Yeah, I'm into that. I was actually Googling to see if there were any Black Panthers from our area, but I couldn't do that fast enough. But this guy does seem pretty great. I like the selection. So I would say yes to
also was.
You're killing me.
Can somebody translate what she's saying?
Alexis, please use your cell phone and call me.
Yeah, you might have to use a cell phone.
Or like text it in the chat or something like
She
that.
can't.
because
We don't have access to the chat. Just call me.
We got
or
our
just
vote
on the
too.
We have the Q&A. Okay, so yeah, I guess if there are no other revolutionaries or Black Panther Party folks from Uptown, I love that selection. I would say yes to all except for Basquiat. That would be a firm no.
Okay.
I'll just put you down for a no.
I mean, he looks like he's done some really incredible work, but I just feel strongly about
I get that.
No, it's cool. I was messing.
That's totally, that is a 100% reasonable opinion to
Yeah.
hold. I don't share it, but I don't have a problem with it. I mean, it's cool.
Yep.
I mean, for me, it reminds me of when we had that sculpture. I can't remember when it was, but there was some sculpture that was placed in, I think, Inwood Hill Park, and it was from this famous artist from Paris or somewhere else. And I guess I just don't really understand. I mean, I understand,
Are you explaining your no vote? Because it's past 8:30. I'm sorry,
Okay,
Danielle.
I'm sorry.
And I think there might need to be some reading up on Basquiat too.
I mean, I just read the Wikipedia page. But if you want to send me more material, I'd be happy to read it.
I mean, all four of these pass, so we can keep it going. I think Alexa.
If I could just add one thing and just compliment everyone, because I think also if you look at the diversity amongst these individuals in terms of gender, sexual orientation, et cetera, I think it's really.
It's a great list.
Astounding.
It's a great list.
I just called Alexis. She said she also wanted to say that Larry Neal was a pioneer in the theater working with Amiri Baraka. So, we're representing arts, politics.
Yeah.
All
Local
kinds.
activism.
For the record, I'm yes to all as well.
Cool.
I just don't see how we can't come up with an artist that was actually from this area and died in this area.
So you're a no vote, right? I think this passes.
Yeah.
No. She's at where. So it's not an it. There are 4 its. So there are 3 of them are unanimous, and one of them is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in favor and 1 opposed. So I will craft a resolution. Excellent. I like children in this Zoom.
Aww.
Hello there. Hello, adorable Hoppa child. Okay, now Francisco, you got to show us the babies.
And Nobles, where are your
Nobles? Where are your kids?
They're in bed. When I blacked out for a second, I went to go give them a hug and a kiss.
So yeah, I will put together a reso with a little bit of biographical information about each of these 4 people, and I will reflect the vote as we had it. And again, this is an ongoing process. We've got many places to name, and we've got many names to honor, and I look forward to more of this. And I have to say, as much of a bummer as Zoom meetings can be, this felt the most like a real meeting than any meeting I've had in a year. And I really appreciate everybody's give and take in figuring out the lag on conversation and how we could sort of jump in without jumping on. And yeah, that was fantastic. I had wanted to end this meeting at 8:30. It's already 9, but before we end, I want to give just a couple of minutes to a short conversation about something that was started in the economic development, the business committee around cannabis. This affects this committee sort of less than the other committees, but one of the things that came out of that conversation that Francisco helped to pull together in the business committee is that the legalization of marijuana, the legislation in the state, 2 different versions, one suggested by the governor and another suggested by Liz Kruger, who represents the East Side and has some sign-on from a bunch of other senators, including our own, is that there are some health impacts, but there's also this incredible opportunity to right an economic and criminal justice wrong, to put money into the community that was the most devastated by grossly unfair and frankly racist sentencing policies around enforcement and sentencing for marijuana crimes. So there's a little bit of overlap in our committee to the extent that people get high in parks. And I just wanted to do a lap through the committee and through the public if people have feedback on what are the parks related issues around legalization of marijuana, so that we can sort of pass that on to, or Francisco can pass that on to the Business Development Committee. So Daryl, then Sally, and unless there are other people, I'm going to let Francisco have the last word on that.
I was just going to say that the Public Safety Committee is going to have an entire meeting on this next month.
Clearly. Excellent.
Just for anybody that's interested in talking more.
Fantastic. I love this issue, and I don't want to but there's a little overlap here, and I just wanted to kind of pull this. So I'm really glad that it's happening in public safety. And so Danielle, you and Francisco can take back whatever these comments are to your respective committees. Daryl?
Yeah, I actually didn't have a question about this, though I do have concerns, obviously, about smoking in parks. I mean, I know we've talked about cigarette smoke and hookah smoke before in the past, so I think this should be lumped into that. Okay. But my question was just getting back to the renaming, and maybe Liz, you could just briefly update. I know we did talk about Bennett Park and reaching out to the Native American groups, or maybe specifically the Lenape group. I was just wondering if there was any progress on that. Or
I am reaching out to one of the people, Dr. Chen, who was on that call, the BRC call. So I was able to get his contact information. I want to reach out to him, and I'm hoping that he can connect me to more specific people like at the Lenape Center, because so far I have not had any success in identifying a person there to contact to say, like, are you interested in this? And if so, what name would be meaningful? What are the directions that we should be considering? And then I got kind of sidetracked with the whole African-American burial grounds and African-American naming opportunities that we just discussed.
Got it. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you. Sally.
Okay, just one comment on the renaming, since Dale brought it up. I think we should also reach out to the Lenape Center, and I'm happy to do that.
Yes, please do. That would be great. And if you can report back, share whatever information you have on email so that we have it, and then we can discuss it next month.
With regard to decriminalization of marijuana, I'm all for it. With regard to legalization of marijuana for recreational use, I think that we need to pay much more attention than has been paid to the health implications. The health community, meaning the APA, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Psychological Association, down the list, is firmly opposed to legalization of marijuana for recreational use, given the health impacts. And I think that has not been sufficiently looked at.
Okay.
For the
So
record.
again, not disagreeing at all, but again, that's not part of the purview of this community. So the health,
right, but
the health committee is going to be looking at that. The public safety committee is going to be looking at that piece.
I just, since Francisco's on the call, I think that needs to be seriously considered. And that's why I bring it up here. And I will bring it up in every other committee where it's discussed.
Okay.
I don't want this to be another example of economics overtaking public health concerns, as it was with COVID, it seems.
Fair point, very fair point. For me, I would just like to echo what Daryl had said, regardless of the economic impacts, the social justice impacts, the restorative justice piece, and the whole Pandora's box of the potential health issues. I think the policy is that you're not supposed to smoke in parks. Cigarettes are legal. You're not supposed to smoke them in parks.
Right.
Hookah is legal. You're not supposed to smoke them in parks. E-cigarettes are legal. You're not supposed to use them in parks. So whatever does or doesn't all of those things are not permitted in parks. People do them all the time, but they're not permitted in parks. Neither is public urination, but people do it all the time. So personally, I don't oppose I support legalization of marijuana. I actually don't oppose legalization of marijuana for recreational use. But I think that smoking is prohibited in parks. And I think that all smoking should continue to be prohibited in parks, because I don't think people should smoke in public places because it's annoying to other people in public places.
Liz, I think I'm confused about what it is exactly that we're doing here, especially given what you just said about how smoking is prohibited in park. I actually didn't even know that, but technically prohibited in parks. So where can we potentially make a change? It sounds like if it's illegal, then there is no opportunity. Are we talking about potentially putting forth a resolution that calls for that to be abolished? I mean, I'm just confused. Sorry.
So I think that when the issue was raised in the business committee, one of the things that Francisco and people on the committee and people on the panel said is that there are far-ranging impacts of the legalization of marijuana beyond the economic issues. And as with the Inwood rezoning, and every once in a while there's an issue that touches on every or almost every committee of the board. So at some point there's going to be some kind of resolution that comes out of the community board, and it seems helpful if each of the committees has a kind of quick check-in on the extent to which its purview relates to this issue, and if so, how.
Yeah, it sounds to me, just to summarize, it sounds to me like people are smoking in the parks. There are people that have issues with it, but at the end of the day, smoking is illegal. So I'm just, maybe if Francisco can shed some light about the specific ways that this could potentially affect parks. Otherwise, it seems like we sort of have to wait to see, I don't know, to get more information.
I mean, it may well be that this issue is not so much an issue for this committee, in which case that's fine. And I'm actually kind of getting that sense. But Francisco, is there anything in particular that you're looking to parks on the marijuana issue? You're muted.
When we first rolled out the cannabis issue with the business development committee, and after we got all the information out, I thought it was relevant that every committee where cannabis will have an effect on should have a thorough conversation about what those effects might look like. As far as parks, because it's parks and culture, right?
Yes.
So I figured if we're talking about culture, that this is something that's definitely going to change the culture of our community. 100%. I mean, Sally feels that we shouldn't be legalized recreationally. So already there's gonna be that back and forth that the community is gonna have to deal with as far as what this culture is gonna be like. For example, people smoke cigarettes, people drink alcohol. Okay, now we have this third element that's gonna kind of inject itself into our community.
I think you're not understanding the definition of the word culture as it relates to this committee. By culture, it doesn't mean
Like
the
practices?
ethos and values of the things that we like and do. It means like performing and fine arts, whether it's singing or dancing or music or theater or spoken word or
in the parks, right? Is that what you mean? Like
or
In
any
community spaces, parks,
community spaces
anywhere.
or-
Yeah.
So if this thing becomes legal recreationally, I could see tons of recreational events happening in the parks. Maybe not, I don't know. But
Probably not for this, for the same reason we don't do beer gardens in our parks, to my knowledge. Wait, we do for a medieval festival.
So do we want to think about discussing, I mean, I don't know if this is too big of a, I don't even know, but just, I'm wondering what people's thoughts are on discussing the idea of having areas designated for smoking in the parks. Is that something that we would want to think about, or
we briefly discussed that as something that can be a possibility, but I don't know policy. I don't know what that's going to look like, you know, this year, next year. So I can't speak on that.
It's probably come up
Jennifer?
many times before with cigarette smokers.
But I can't
Right now,
Hold
the
on,
rules
Sally,
are,
you got Jennifer?
right now, the rules are you can smoke on park perimeters, but not inside parks. So the benches all along the, you know, Broadway,
We didn't know that.
Corbin Circle, you can smoke.
Interesting.
And
So
in
maybe we
certain
want to,
parking lots, but not, you know, in the parks where people are using them either for, you know, nature bathing, psychological respite, athletics, those types of things. So it's
Okay.
so maybe what we want to think about is like signage and just letting people know where smoking is prohibited, and just like rules around smoking in parks.
Yeah, because I didn't know that you
they're
could
at
smoke
each of
around
the
the
park entrances.
Yeah, the signage is there.
Okay.
It's just disregarded.
Sally, you got something?
I would just hope that the park policy doesn't change. I don't think we should be encouraging smoking or use of alcohol or any of that kind of stuff.
I
in the
agree.
parks.
I agree.
But just so you guys know, I mean, cannabis can be consumed in various ways. It doesn't have to be smoking. So,
Oh, if you're
it's
eating a
still
brownie,
right? That's what I'm saying. So, if there's an event at a park and it's legal, and people are selling brownies at a some sort of station,
that's
you know,
fine.
that's something that can happen.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not against recreational use, and Sally, I will look into the healthcare issues for it, but right now I'm not really against it. I am against smoking in the park of any type.
Okay.
We don't want
So
fire.
just to kind of rein this in a little bit, it sounds like this is appropriate for revisiting.
Yeah, let's table this.
Once there's a clearer recommendation from the Business Development Committee, the Health Committee, the Public Safety Committee, we may want to take another lap around this issue, but it sounds like the consensus is, I mean, personally, it's not an issue for this committee. Personally, it sounds like most people agree with recreational use being okay. Sally is opposed. I'm sort of on the fence on that. But there's some.
I'm opposed.
Yeah, that Barbara's opposed, but there's some diversity of opinion around that. But it sounds, I'm not actually hearing anybody saying, oh yes, we think smoking in parks is a good idea. It sounds like we are still okay with the idea that smoking, since smoking is prohibited in parks anyway, smoking of marijuana would also be prohibited in parks. Am I understanding that consensus correctly?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can say general consensus, yeah.
Yeah, so general consensus is the main issue is we still don't want smoking in the parks. Other forms of consumables may wind up being appropriate, whatever the law winds up being,
Right.
although there is consensus, not
Skip
unanimous agreement that that's appropriate.
Only 5 seconds is quick.
Did I summarize that?
That sounded perfect to me.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, the impact on this particular committee it's minimal compared to
Correct.
public
But
safety.
I did want to make sure, you know, it is a very big issue, and I
Yeah.
did want to make sure that we gave it a little bit of time.
Yep.
With that, I would love to go eat my dinner.
Yeah, let's do this.
Motion
So-
to adjourn.
I second that.
Damn.
Okay. And listen, Nobles, Francisco, next week, I want some, next month, I want some children.
I'll
can
try to
have
get them for the general meeting.
Fantastic. I'll take it.
Do we want real quick, do we want to see who wants to do minutes next meeting right now?
Oh, yes. Any volunteers for minutes? Don't everybody talk at once?
Now everyone's quiet.
Yeah.
Danielle?
I still have COVID brain. I still have COVID brain.
Yeah,
My brain
get
is
that.
recovering.
Yeah, it's a thing. So Barbara or Alexis, would one of you be willing to do the minutes? Okay, Alexis is giving us the thumbs up.
Alexis
Barbara
has done it before.
She has, but I see
why she's
Barbara
so good at it.
waving papers that she's grading and shaking her head. So I feel that.
Sally?
Not really interested.
Yeah, I think,
Because they can't keep going back and forth between the same three people, Liz,
Playing with the
myself, and
butterflies.
Alexis.
you know, if Alexis doesn't mind doing it, I am grateful. And
All right, if you don't mind doing it. Sure.
Okay.
I'll do it the time after next.
Fantastic.
There we go.
Well,
All right. I'm writing this down, by the way.
August meeting. I'll do our August meeting.
All right, so
But
Alexis,
Noble,
Danielle.
you guys are so great at it. I feel like we should really play to your strengths and your
That's
skills.
cute. And Daryl.
And Daryl's doing August. No, he's
August.
not. Daryl's doing September. We don't meet in August.
Oh,
I think that's what a team is. It's all about knowing each other's strengths.
Oh man, get out of here, Danielle. You didn't even come on with your picture or with your video.
All right,
tonight.
we're still recording,
That's
people.
because I still have COVID brain.
All right. Okay,
All
we're
right.
getting a little silly, but I'm actually okay with the public knowing that we like and respect each
The
other.
two that
and
are
get
left?
along. So, all right. Thank you very
All
much,
right.
everybody.
Love you
Again,
guys.
Thank you,
Night, all.
Paula.
Bye, guys.
Uh,
Good night, everyone.
the general.